We were one of the first national outlets that gave voice to folks like Jasmine Koenig, who was trying to get the attention about white Democratic donor Ed Buck, who would invite gay black men to his home and then feed them drugs. Jamel Moore was the first young man, 2017, died in Ed Buck's apartment, but other folks did not want to pay attention, so he continued. Then Timothy Dean died in 2019. And so it was finally with that where the attention then began, that got picked up. Jackie Lacey, who was then the DA in L.A., would not prosecute Ed Buck, was moving way too slow. Well, he was indicted on the federal level. Today, Ed Buck was found guilty of multiple crimes for the deaths of these two brothers in his West Hollywood apartment. He was accused, again, giving them drugs during sexual encounters. He was found guilty on 9 felony counts, including 2 counts of distribution of controlled substances resulting in death. Folks, the charges carry a mandatory minimum of 20 years in prison. That means the 66-year-old Ed Buck, who had given a ton of money to various Democratic candidates in California, he is going to spend the rest of his life in prison as a result for the death of Timothy Dean and Jamel Moore. Here's the deal. He had given more than $53,000 to Democratic candidates and to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee since 2008. It was after he was arrested that Democrats, several of them, began to give money back. Folks, y'all let me know if we could get Jasmine Koenig on the phone or the mother of Jamel Moore. As I said, a lot of national media outlets did not cover this story. I put Jasmine on Tom Joyner Morning Show, on my TV One show as well, to get the attention. A lot of folks in various LGBTQ media organizations would not cover this story as well. But finally, justice for Timothy Dean and Jamel Moore, with Ed Buck being found guilty on 9 counts. Again, will spend the rest of his life in prison. This is important, Mustafa, because the attitude that existed, that also this was the defense that they put on, that basically these 2 black men, didn't matter. Ed Buck hired Christopher Darden, another prominent black attorney in L.A., paid them lots of money. They tried to suggest these 2 men died of AIDS. And so the family was mystified with this. But the fact that Timothy Dean, a second man, died because authorities would not do anything about Jamel Moore's death, that is what is so shameful about this case.
Most definitely. You know, it's always interesting that our lives don't seem to have much value to folks. Sometimes not even to the folks that we have supported, and sometimes not even to our own communities, depending on, what our particular affiliations might be, or those types of things. $53,000 for, 3 men's lives who are now gone. We don't know if there were more. And of course, I know for this particular case, we're talking about 2 men who are part of this, who lost their lives to this murderer, a mass murderer. So for me, I'm always real clear with folks. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or independent. If you do evil, if you do injustice, then you have to be called on it, and you have to be held accountable. And we just got to make sure that folks are willing to do that, who are in these elected positions, in these enforcement positions. And again, thank you to you and the show for making sure that you put a national spotlight so that this individual was eventually brought to justice.
Here is one of the mothers speaking after the conviction of Ed Buck.
Hello, my name is Letitia Nixon. I'm Jamel Moore's mom. I want to say thank you to everybody that believed us. Thank you to everybody that reported correctly on my son, because my son was more than an escort, more than a prostitute, as many of you guys said. It's more than a movie or documentary. This is my baby, my son, who is a human being, and he's loved by lots of people. But today is bittersweet. Today is the date that my son was murdered. when he left my house 4 years ago. But we got victory today. We got victory in the West today. So I'm grateful and I'm happy. And thank you guys.
This, again, Teresa, folks, you know, this first brother, Jamel Moore, dies. Nothing. I mean, Ed Buck just continued, and it wasn't until Timothy Dean died and the pressures ratcheted up that then folks took action. But 2 black men had to die for them to do something.
Yeah, Ed Buck is, an epitome of a serial rapist and murderer. Again, for him to either get away with his actions, and then we have to see another strong black woman giving thanks, that justice was served. It's disgusting in itself. I mean, praise to God for her strength. But again, this is an ongoing occurrence when it comes to justice for black people. It's not only, we're getting shot down by cops, for sometimes listening to their direction or getting understanding for their direction or just for not saying anything. But then, we then have to go into this case and see the evidence that is right before us. And it takes black media news outlets to put this information out there and continuously make sure that justice can get served. Because even, Buck's financial records that was going to congressional elected officials who likely already knew his story way ahead of accepting those financial donations for their campaign. But then even for them to give it back, but not do anything, about it, even when they did get elected, it's just horrible. And again, these are the track records when we start looking at those who want to represent individuals and people. That doesn't mean a specific type of society or a specific type of individual. That means representing all people. And so we definitely have to take a look at those who are in these higher positions. But again, Ed Buck found guilty. I'm glad he's found guilty, and I'm sure everybody else is. But how do we make sure that Ed Buck doesn't exist again?
This is also why it's important to understand who is the DA, Faraji, because Jasmine Koenig tweeted this out, and I had to retweet it. She said, where is it? She said, "Dear Jackie Lacey, today Ed Buck, the man you said you didn't have enough evidence to prosecute, was found guilty of 9 counts in federal court. I'm too much of a lady to tell you what I really want to tell you, so I'll let this gift do the talking for me." Jasmine. Black DA and Jackie Lacey, she literally said, not enough evidence to prosecute Ed Buck. Thank God the federal attorneys saw there was enough evidence, and he was convicted on 9 counts.
First and foremost, Ed Buck is a savage beast. I mean, just out of the fact of when you start to look at the nature of the crimes that he committed, you really understand that this man is way out of the realm of being a human being. But more importantly, like you just mentioned, I mean, why are we having the conversation? Like, if the evidence is there, he can get prosecuted on a federal level. He should have gotten prosecuted much sooner and much quickly, where 2 black men didn't have to die. But I think something to Teresa's point that needs to be said. People knew the type of individual that Ed Buck was, and they still took his money. Politicians, political leaders. This is the same type of savagery we saw when Jeffrey Epstein was killed, that he was in those circles of influential people. He gave money, he advised people and counseled people, but people knew exactly the type of individual he was. And so it makes me go back to what we started this conversation with, Brother Roland, which is the moral resurrection that is needed in this country. This is not just about voting rights and dark money, but this comes down to how do you get human beings to be human beings? We're at this point now in our country's history where you can deal and go to business with individuals who are just spiritually and morally bankrupt, but you still feel like they're good citizens. And some people, in the eyes of some citizens, they might have said, "Oh, he's a Democratic donor. He's for the people. He's good," because they even classified him as an activist, an advocate. Can you believe that? And then let's just look at the fact that Christopher Darden, this is the same Chris Darden, folks, that was a part of the O.J. Simpson trial. Okay? But Chris Darden decided to take on the case. A black man, two black men taking on a case of a crazy-ass white man that has sexually assaulted and killed two other black men, and they're defending him. So when we're talking about all
you know what? Okay. So here's my whole deal. The reality is this here. The Constitution says that everybody's entitled to a defense. Fine. They want to represent him. Guess what? They lost. They got their asses kicked. Now, the check cleared, but so here's my whole deal. People can get anybody to represent them, and so there are defense attorneys. This is what they do. But the bottom line is they lost. Their arguments had no merit whatsoever. The jury found Ed Buck guilty. Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.